Hello everyone, my name is Barbara. I'm the owner and founder of Philisacreatives and your host for today's show. Today I have a special guest and she's going to be talking to us about her book, My Book of Shona and Ndebele. And as you know, languages are such an important part of in the classroom, whether it's world languages or any other topic. And then we talk about different ways, how can this be part also of cultural awareness, not only for our kiddos, but also if you want to bring culture into your home, and other ways you can do that as well. So I hope you enjoy this interview today. So today I have a very interesting guest, and she has written a book, my first book of Shona and Ndebele words. And you know, you guys, that I am passionate about new words and new languages. So I can't wait to get started with her. And welcome, Yeve from Philisacreatives. Tell us a little bit about the idea behind your book. What inspired you to write it? I know I love language and I love new language. And as you can see, pronunciation is such a big factor in that. So tell us about your book idea.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Barbara. I love what you're doing. For me, the inspiration behind it is, I was looking for books for my daughter's library when she was very little. In fact, this idea started when I was pregnant with her, and my husband and I were looking for books to include in her library. And because we are originally from Zimbabwe, we wanted to have some books that represented Zimbabwe. We speak Shona, which is the language I speak, and my husband speaks Ndebele. And the two of those languages are the primary languages in Zimbabwe. He speaks both Shona and Ndebele. I speak Shona. And so I had this idea to first I was searching for books that would teach the languages, and I didn't find quality resources. And so I decided to create my own at my husband's, suggestion. And I created my own book that teaches Shona, Ndebele, and then also has English words. And the concept is basic words so that kids and caregivers and parents just know the basic words, in those languages. And that's kind of what started the book. And then my brand, the company Philisacreatives. Philisa is a Ndebele word, which means to bring to life. And so I started that because I envision creating other resources that celebrate Zimbabwean heritage, African culture, and really targeting children. Because as you probably know, there isn't a lot of representation. And so I wanted to just be part of increasing representation in children's literature, in the children's learning space.
I love that. I really like the idea. How are you combining these languages, and both of these languages that you and your husband have, and I'm sure you bring into your home and your culture. So are they just two separate dialects, and you incorporate that into the book?
Yes, that's a great question. So the languages are separate languages, and they are both Bantu, what are called Bantu languages, which is a group of languages spoken throughout Africa, from all the way from West and East Africa all the way down to the South. They're all similarly related. However, they're different. It's similar to how Spanish and French are related. They're like cousins.
Right.
You'll have words that are similar, but they're not identical. And so they're cousins in that way, but they're distinct. And two tribes, Shona tribe and Ndebele tribe in Zimbabwe, historically have a very fractured relationship. And it is very rare that you would find a Shona and a Ndebele book.
Right.
It's either one or the other. And growing up in Zimbabwe, I moved to the US when I was 16, but growing
Uh-huh.
up, I never learned Ndebele, even though it is one of the schools, and I lived in a predominantly Shona speaking and English speaking part of the
Uh-huh.
country. And so there is that fractured history. And so part of what I did with this book was I was a bit of a rebel, and I said, well, I'm going to bring these two languages together, and I want to
Right.
showcase that, we are similar. We are one people, all from Zimbabwe. We are unique, have unique words and all of that. But if you have a family like mine where we speak Shona and Ndebele and English, it's
Uh-huh.
important to celebrate that. And then you also have people who, like me, grew up not speaking Ndebele or learning Ndebele. And so I'm learning because of my family dynamics, right? But I always wanted to learn. And so this book allows me, even though I'm an adult, to do that. And
Right.
then you have people who never learned Shona. And so this book allows them to do that. So
Right.
it's a
Right.
way for me to kind of bridge the gap that existed. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
small act. I'm not going to be able to unify the tribes, but in my own way, I'm doing so through this book and just showcasing that both languages are important, both cultures are important. And, it's time that we change the narrative, so to speak, and embrace both, and the next
I,
kids who are
right.
like my daughter, first generation American, they should have an opportunity to learn the
Right.
languages from
Mm-hmm.
their parents' home country without any
Mm-hmm.
discrimination about, well, this language is better, this tribe is better. They should have that opportunity, right?
I think
And
that's a
so
great
yeah.
point. It's a great point because just like in Hispanic communities, we have so many multicultural homes, and we are brought up differently with different cultures, different traditions. And I love how you compare them, but at the same time, understand that there's a common ancestor, if you will,
Mm,
for the languages, and bring that to your daughter, bring the
mm,
culture in like that. That's a great thing to do. Now, what languages, you talked about the languages, but what specific age group could they start this book? Say
yeah,
someone bring this into their home and they're interested in this new languages. What grade
yeah.
level do you think they could start?
So that's a good question, and one that I get a lot. And, the book, I believe, like if you looked on Amazon, for example, it's marketed from like age 3 and up. My
Uh-huh.
belief personally, as a parent, as a cultural curator, as a language enthusiast, is you start teaching languages the minute you start communicating with your child. And so when they're babies, so for me,
Right.
and what we did is very early on with our daughter, we were communicating to her, even communicating with her.
Hmm.
We were using baby sign.
Good.
We
Yeah.
were we were speaking in Shona, we were speaking in Ndebele. And so, I think as young as the age at which you communicate with your child,
Hmm.
and I think that's different depending on whether you are a native speaker of one of the languages. If you're a native speaker of one of the languages, then it's very easy for you to do that because you are trying to instill that in your child, right? And so early on is easy for you to do from, like, let's say, birth onwards. If you are a non-native speaker of Shona and Ndebele and you want this book more as an exposure tool,
Hmm.
then I definitely would say from the age of 3 and up, you can use this book to try and introduce concepts, and it has beautiful illustrations of Zimbabwe, and so you can use
Right.
to have dialogue around all of that. And so 3, I would think, is when you can start. And then don't forget the third use case, which I alluded to and mentioned before, which is for those of us who are learning, we're a native speaker of one
Hmm.
of the languages and now we want to learn the other one. It doesn't matter how old you are. I have
Right.
people who tell me that they have bought this book because they're Zimbabwean and they might speak
Uh-huh.
Shona and they might speak Ndebele, and they have a spouse now
Right.
who is
Right.
non-Zimbabwean and they're trying to teach their spouse, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I
Yeah.
think I like it that you have those illustrations in there because It allows as young, like you said, as young maybe as 3 or even 2,
Mm-hmm.
because you can point out to those pictures in a way, as a way to teach, because this is a great
Mm-hmm.
method to teach new languages, is to do a visual context and actually apply it to those new words. And you can start with English, and then you can start with the other 2 languages.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, if you want to apply it to older students, of course you can do that as well. I love that idea. I think it's just so comprehensive in the way you have done that, that I love it. So it's
Thank
not
you.
necessarily like a dictionary where you have,
Right.
just a plain, good old text of what that word is, but it's got the visual, and then you have the English, and you have Shona, and Ndebele words. I
Yes.
love it. So you talked a little bit about that. This book is really about multicultural, uh, bringing culture into the home. What do you think it could be something else that you hope that families, not necessarily maybe just that are familiar with these languages, but what do you hope families that are interested in languages to learn from your books? What is your main theme?
Yeah, my main theme is you know, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That is the theme that undercuts everything that I will produce under Philisacreatives. I want to be able to, like I said before, show little kids who look like my daughter that they are represented, right? And showcase. The book has a main character who's a little black girl, and she has a little brother. I want to
Mhm.
showcase that so that kids who look like mine can see themselves represented, right? And then I also want to expose and to teach kids who don't look like mine that there are kids out there who are like this, and there's kids in Zimbabwe who are very similar to them, and they eat certain food and they do this and they do that. So the concept of windows and mirrors, which is that kids who are brown and black can see themselves in a mirror, right? And then windows, kids who are not can look through and learn, because we live in a society now where, I mean, it's multicultural, like you said, right? And it's very rare for kids to, let's say, be in a school where everybody is from the exact same place and they have the exact same family structure and they eat the exact same things and they have the exact same culture. Things are different, and so it's important to expose our kids early on and to teach them about differences and celebrate differences, right, in a way that is positive. And so I want kids and anyone reading my book really to take that away. And
Mhm.
I mentioned also celebrating African and Zimbabwean heritage and culture.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, in literature period, but in children's literature specifically, books about Africa, books about
Mhm.
Zimbabwe are portrayed in a very negative or one-sided way. And what we
Mhm.
know is that Black people are not a monolith, brown people are not a monolith, Africa is not a monolith. And so it's important to have stories told by us that
Mhm.
represent our own reality, right? Instead of having other people telling the story. And in children's literature, what we also know is that most characters in children's literature are animals. And then when it's not animals, it's white characters. And only a small percentage feature brown and black characters. And that
So
deficit is
I
not good.
really like to that's a great point, because I think I like your idea. When I was teaching in the classroom, I had so many diverse students in there, and they were from all different cultures. There was a Title I school, and I taught in very at-risk schools, so I understand how we have to bring this cultural awareness. That's something that teachers need to do, and I think your book does that as well. We want to bring all this culture into our kids so that they can understand that there is other parts of the world. And I think it's so fascinating to learn about different cultures in that way.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful thing to do that. Do you plan to write another book similar to this one? Is there like a part 2, part 3 series? What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely plan to do more. Whether it's a part 2 or 3 remains to be seen. What I say whenever people ask me that is, I just launched this book and published it and was out on the market last year, early last year. And so this is a very young book, and already I am sold out.
Oh,
And so what I want to do and what I will do this year is do have a reprint of the book, get more books into homes all across the world. I've been very
right,
fortunate in that people all over the world literally have bought my book, whether it's the ebook version or the physical copy. I've had, orders from Tokyo, Japan,
right.
even though I know
Amazing.
nobody in Tokyo.
That's
um,
wonderful.
yeah, Australia, New Zealand, the
Right,
UK, Italy, here in the US, and then
right.
Zimbabwe, South Africa. And so my focus
Mhm.
really is just on this book right now because I recognize there is still more reach that I can have and get this book out there and get the message out there. So that's my focus right now. In the future, for sure, I will do other things, um, but for now, I'm focusing on this book. And, ideally, one day, I really want to be the one-stop shop for all things positive about, empowering and embracing African heritage beyond just
Right.
Zimbabwe. That's my goal, is to be, the media company that kind of um,
and and
does that.
and right, and to bring in probably more different other dialects, other
Yeah.
languages. I think
Yeah.
that'd be that's a wonderful project. And speaking of, you mentioned about your book, and you mentioned that it's available on Amazon. How can readers and audience learn more about your book?
Absolutely. So you can buy the book from our website, which is
Uh-huh.
as Philisacreatives. Amazon,
Oh, I know. Can you repeat that one more
sure,
time?
of course, Philisacreatives. And Barbara, I'll give this to you so you can add it to the show notes as well.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Yeah, so Philisacreatives, Philisa creatives.com. You can buy the book there. There's also links on Philisacreatives to our social media. We're active on Instagram and Twitter. We do have a presence on LinkedIn and Facebook as well, but most active on Instagram and Twitter. And then on
Absolutely.
Amazon has a deal where they sell the book, and I get a small royalty from Amazon. Of course, the
Uh-huh.
benefit of Amazon is that, Amazon can get you the book in a day.
This is the
I
print
can't do
version,
that because
correct?
I'm a full-time working mom and all of that. And so what I always say to people is, you will support me the most if you buy it directly from my website. However, I do want people to get the book conveniently and all of that. And so, buy the book on Amazon as well if you
Okay.
need to.
It,
And then I have several distributors. I have distributors in the UK.
is that a print version?
Yes, the print version. And then the ebook, good question. The ebook is available on my website as well.
Okay, awesome. So they can get different versions, whether it's print or digital. Okay,
Yes,
awesome. Great.
yes.
And again, everybody, I'll include everything on the show notes, how to get in touch if you want to take a look at the book and just to learn more about all these wonderful languages. I think it's a great way to bring into more cultural awareness to our kiddos. And of course, anything that has to do with languages, I am passionate about. So thank you so much for joining me today and learning more about your book. And I hope I get to see more about these wonderful languages. Maybe you can add more languages in the future.
Absolutely. Maybe we can do a collaboration, Barbara.
That'd be
Why
awesome. Thank
not?
you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Yele from Philisacreatives and her latest book, my first book of Shona and Ndebele. I think it's a wonderful way to start to bring into that culture like we talked about in the interview and learn more about African heritage, or if you are starting perhaps bringing in the Hispanic community or the Hispanic heritage into your classroom, I think it's a good way to start to consider what are some things that you can start to do that. A picture book is a great way to do that. Of course, as well, other read alouds, videos, music, any of those are such wonderful ways to start to bring in and understanding what cultural awareness can do. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. So I hope you join me next time for another fun bilingual, either reading or another guest that can talk to us about either language or any other interesting topics that can help us with language development. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today. I hope everybody has a wonderful day. And make sure to join me for another episode next time at the Spanish for Kiddos podcast. Goodbye, everyone.